Welcome, everyone. Join us in welcoming musical legend Kenny Vance. Kenny has lived an incredible life. His career has spanned more than 60 years. Now, his hit film Heart and Soul is the #1 streaming documentary on Amazon. He started his first band at the age of 15, the Harbor Lights, co-founded Jay and the Americans, opened for both the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. He wrote and directed scores and soundtracks for films like Animal House, The Warriors, Eddie and the Cruisers, Triple Platinum album. He became musical director for Saturday Night Live. He was in 4 Woody Allen films and started his acting career. In the 1990s, his career went full circle when he founded the Planetones and toured the country, reintroducing the world to the beautiful sounds of doo-wop. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Kenny, and also a quick intro. Dave Ditto Tawil, another Brooklyn legend, is my co-host. Welcome, everyone.
Ken, got a question. When did you know that this was going to be the rest of your life? What moment of time was that? When did it begin? The music.
Oh, that's when you're a musician, you always think that the last job that you had was basically it. There's a certain mentality that musicians have, so you never really let up. I can't say that I knew it for even through Jay and the Americans, which lasted till 1973 for me. I never realized it. And I never realized, like, this is it. I was always thinking, well, when am I going to get a real job? But something always came up where I didn't really have to do that. I did a commercial. I did a Pepsi commercial, and I made enough money to pay the rent and to keep going. And then other things happened. And after Jay and the Americans, I wound up in the film business and was very lucky with that. And then so it just kept going. And then here it is so many years later, and I realized, well, I never did really have to get a day job.
So tell us about Erasmus Hall High School when you went back to that yard and started singing. Tell us about the Brill Building with your mom and how your dad felt about you moving into this world of music.
Okay, let's see. When I did go to Erasmus High School, we found there was an arch there that had the most incredible echo. It's right on Flatbush Avenue. And guys in those days, in the 50s, were, in the late 50s, were either, on a sports team, in a gang, and there were other guys who, were imitating songs that they heard on the Alan Freed show. And those groups would go into the arch because it had just the most incredible sound. And I remembered that all these years. And then about 10 years ago, when we were starting to work on the film, one of the days was spent outside of Erasmus High School. I went there with a couple of the Planetones, and we started to sing and reminisce inside of the arch there. And it was a special moment because it actually, sometimes you go back to places that you remember as a kid and they don't have the same impact that you thought they would have. But this did. It had the same impact that I remembered when I was a kid singing there. And it was just a special moment. We have it all filmed. And so one day I'll revisit that and possibly do a sequel to the film that we just put out called Heart and Soul, A Love Story.
Tell us about the Brill Building and your mom sending you back. That's a great story.
Well, that's years later. We basically had a friend by the name of Terry Phillips who was working in the Brill Building as a songwriter. And Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, who were the two iconic godfathers of this music, they wrote Hound Dog, they wrote Jailhouse Rock, they produced Elvis Presley, they produced Big Mama Thornton singing Hound Dog, they wrote Yakety Yak, Charlie Brown, Searching for the Coasters, they wrote Drip Drop and Ruby Baby for the Drifters, and were just instrumental in starting all kinds of people like Phil Spector, like Jeff Barry, Ellie Greenwich, who wrote Be My Baby, and many, many other people from that time. And so he got us an audition. And so we met Jay Trainer, who was actually had taken the place of the lead singer of the Mystics. And he's the lead singer on a song called Blue Star. And we worked with him, me, Sandy, Howie, and Jay Trainer. The four of us got an audition to sing for Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. So we went up to the Brill Building, and which was on 49th and Broadway. And the Colony Records was on one side of the Brill Building, and on the other side was Jack Dempsey's, which was a restaurant. And we went in, and we were terrified. And we had learned a song called Wisdom of a Fool originally by the Five Keys.
And how old were you at that point?
I'm Jay Trainer is 17. I'm 17 turning 18. And we go up there and we sing a cappella for them. We go into the office and there they are. And we were like these kids, and we basically go into the song. And as it turned out, they loved what they heard. They were impressed. And they said, we'd like to record you guys, and can you, we could come back tomorrow, and we have some ideas about what we'd like to record. So we went back the next day, and we walk in, and the whole vibe was different. And they said, we really like you guys, but we really don't have the time. We're working with Elvis Presley, we're working with the Coasters, we're working with the Drifters. So we were dejected, and I wound up going home, taking the train back down towards Flatbush Avenue, and I went into the house, and my mother, of course, she detected that there was something wrong. So she said, "What happened?" And I said to her, "Well, they changed their minds. They don't want to record us." And so she says, she paused for a moment, and she says, "You've been in the business a long time." And she says, "You go back there tomorrow and tell them that they can't do this to you."
That's beautiful.
So I thought to myself, what do you mean? I've been in the business 2 weeks.
You're 11 years old. How long could you be in the business?
17.
So I wound up, taking the subway back up Flatbush Avenue, got off at 49th Street, and went up 51st Street, actually. And then I walked up 49th Street back to the Brill Building, and I went up to their office. I think it was on the 9th floor. And I remember the receptionist, her name was Bonnie. And I said, "Do you think," I was like a timid mouse.
This is the next day? This is the next day? The next day, okay.
And it was like, I went in and I knocked on the door, and so I said I wanted to speak to Jerry and Mike. So she goes in and she comes back out, and she says, "Okay," she says, "they'll see you." So I walked in and I froze.
Oh, shit.
And I said, My mother told me to tell you guys that you can't do this to us.
You bring up potato latkes or what?
And they looked at each other. They looked at me and they said, you know what? Okay, tell the guys to come back tomorrow.
That's
The
great.
next day we came back, and then it was about and within the next month or two they recorded us, and the first record was Tonight from West Side Story. I think it was 1961.
Wow.
And then the second record, and it was a territorial hit. It sold about 40,000 in New York. And then we became stars in our neighborhood. And then the next record they made was She Cried, but the A side was Dawning, the flip side of that. And they put the Dawning out, and it really, it was being played, but it didn't catch on. And then slowly, She Cried. It took months and months and months, but it wound up becoming a number 5 record in the United States. And I remember taking the train from, actually took the subway from Brighton Beach, the L over there, the elevated subway, and right by the Belt Parkway, and went into the city, and we went to Penn Station, and we went down to Philadelphia, and we sang She Cried on the Dick Clark's American Bandstand, and man, that was it.
And this
It was
is
one
this
of
is
those experiences that many years later you just have, you have a big smile on your face because you can't ever forget something like that.
and this is how long after your mom stuck up for you?
Oh, within the year, within the next, within the year, within the 8 months, 10 months, a year, when all of those things happened.
Who are the
What was
guys
your
who influenced you most at that time, Ken? Who were the people that I
Well,
got to be?
they didn't realize they were influencing me, but I would. We had a phonograph player, a record player, in the basement of my house, and I would go down there. In those days, there were a few fly-by-night record stores that sold 45s. There was one, Halpern's, I remember it, right across the street on Flatbush Avenue from the Arch, from Erasmus High School. And so you could get 45s there. And there was another place in probably Steve's father, like in Sheepshead Bay,
in
and
Brighton Beach?
in
He
Brighton
had
Beach,
for
and then there
37
was one
years, 27 years.
in one in on I'm not sure
You said Bay
exactly.
Road there was one.
Yeah, there were a few, and you'd go in there and you'd have records by James Shepard and the Heartbeats, and there'd be records by the Clovers, records by the Penguins, records by a group that I always loved, which was the Channels. The Closer You Are by the Channels, and then as time went by, Louis Lyman and the
Oh
Teen
yeah.
Chords with I'm So Happy and Lydia, and so I would take those records home and listen to them. And I think the one person I always appreciated Earl Lewis, who was the lead singer of the Channels, and I appreciated Richard Blandon from the Dubs, and I appreciated Arlene Smith. I mean, she killed everybody with Maybe and He's Gone, and I loved James Shepard from the Heartbeats. You're 1,000 miles away, and somebody like that really, his pathos and his sincerity really touched me. So, I mean, so what happened after that, guys, was that it wasn't soon after that I was influenced by those records that I heard on the Alan Freed show. But then Alan Freed announced that he was going to have the first ever. Now this is important. To me anyway, it's
That was
important
the
because
beginning.
this was
Yeah.
the first ever rock and roll show in anywhere really, at the Brooklyn Paramount Theater.
That was the birth of rock and roll.
It really was the birth of rock and roll,
Were
and
you there that night? Were you there that night?
I was there one of those nights. I don't know if I was there the first night, but the shows would run for Christmas shows, would run 10 days, run for Easter show
Yeah.
and the Labor Day show. And I was there. And when I saw those groups live on the stage, I mean, that was incredible. There's a book, it's called The Song of Brooklyn, and it's by Mark Elliott. And he actually interviewed a lot of the people that were on that show. And he interviewed in that book, I know Ditto is in that book, and also Little Anthony and the Imperials. And a surprise interview is with Cleve Duncan from the Penguins, because they were from Los Angeles. They made Earth Angel in Los Angeles, but they came to play at the Brooklyn Paramount, and they got a reception there that, that 50 years later, when they were interviewed for the book, the guy never forgot that, because that audience in Brooklyn let them know how much they were loved, and they gave them the adulation and the screaming and the passion that shot through all of the performers. And it was that moment, I believe, in Brooklyn, where the spark, as Dave was saying, of rock and roll really was born, as we
And in you,
learned
Kenny,
to know it.
and the spark in you, Kenny, that you took to your 80s. Tell me about that burn that I watched for all these years, man.
Well, I realized at an early age that, I could, you either had it or you didn't have it. I just had the vibe of what that was. I think some words fall short of capturing what an emotion is. It's very difficult to describe an emotion, but I think the best version that I've ever heard of it is when Paul Simon inducted the Moonglows into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I can't say that I can remember it exactly, but if you go on YouTube and you look up Paul Simon inducting the Moonglows into the Rock and Roll of Fame, he basically said, I heard sincerely, and it was perfect.
So it's the truth in that moment. Talk to me about Smith and when you met her in Heart and Soul. I was crying throughout that entire moment.
Right before you said that, you hit on something that I just wanted to elaborate on. And that was, there's something spiritual about it. I grew up, I never, heard the word spirituality or sensuality. I didn't know what those words meant. But when we wound up hearing this music, there was something about it that transported you to another place. And I remember when I first started to work with my group, and we would go down in the subway and we didn't even know what harmony was, but we would hit it. And if everybody was on a different note and you'd hit that triad, it was an immediate eye contact with everybody. It transcended the moment. We were flying, and you made eye contact. And then soon after that, we took 8x10s, and we were in show business. Probably, Dave, the same kind of feeling that you must have had when you played basketball.
What do you mean had, white man? Ken, that Michael Jordan burn that's inside of you for music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you felt that as a boy. I can only sense it had to be in you as a boy.
Absolutely. It was in me, but I didn't know what it was. I mean, it could have been in a lot of people, but they weren't as lucky as I was to have an outlet for it. The fact that I learned it from my teachers, you know, the James Shepherds and the people from the Dubs and people from the Channels and those guys, Frankie Lyman and Louis Lyman. And I basically learned it from them and I could imitate them. But then when I wound up going into the subway to sing a cappella because it was a great echo sound, and actually we hit a note and we could sing Gloria by the Cadillacs. It was like, you know, it was just out of this world. It was a spiritual moment that where you bonded with the other people that you were singing with, and things like that, you know, never happened to me anywhere else.
Take me to that moment, Ken. I mean, take me from Brighton Beach on the boardwalk on Coney Island Avenue to opening up for the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Take me to that. Take us to that. Take us to that.
Did you get to meet the Beatles? Did you get to meet any of those guys?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, wow.
So we got a call to go. Well, the Beatles were first, and I think it was in February of 1964, and it was right after the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show, and so we got, you know, and so we took a train down to Washington, D.C. It was on a Tuesday night, the Tuesday after Sunday, after they played on Ed Sullivan. And we got there, and all of a sudden you see these four guys, and there's about 100 reporters. And they're sitting behind the dais and they're answering the questions. And, you know, I didn't really have any idea, you know, what they were pretty much, because they basically were copying songs by Buddy Holly or the Everly Brothers or Chuck Berry or Little Richard. And, you know, that's pretty much what they were doing. But anyway, after that press conference, we just sort of stood there because in our world of rock and roll, you know, the mainstream media wasn't there, and it wasn't there until, you know, the British invasion, and then all of a sudden it became kind of hip, you know, to be that way. But, you know, Chuck Berry was never in the newspaper. Little Richard and these guys and Fats Domino, you know, only us kids knew who they were. They never were in your parents' newspaper.
Was that the very beginning of the British invasion?
Yeah, the Beatles were the very beginning.
We're the first group.
1964, you know, and then the Hollies and Jerry and the Pacemakers, and then later on the Who and Led Zeppelin and
Dave Clark 5. I love them.
Yeah, the Dave Clark 5. So, you know, the Beatles came over to us, and they were just guys like us. You know, they had gray suits, no lapels, white shirt, and a tie. They had Nehru jackets, and they were basically, you know, they didn't know what was happening. You know, none of us did. We were kids. We were just kids, you know, that had a hit record. And they were cool. They were totally cool. So we played, and there were a couple of other groups. And then all of a sudden, I was standing with Murray the K, who was the MC. And all of a sudden, the Beatles like made an appearance at the top of the stadium. It was a hockey stadium. Maybe it had 20,000 people, and everybody saw the Beatles, and they started screaming, and they were surrounded by maybe 20 or 30 policemen, and they walked them down to the stage. They got on the stage, and they had these little amplifiers that you have in a Holiday Inn. I don't think people were prepared, you know, for what was going to happen. And the place started screaming. And every time they shook their heads, the people went crazier. It wasn't about the music. It was just about seeing them, and the place, exploded. And I was standing there with Murray the K and just, watching this. And the next day we took a train back to Penn Station with the Beatles.
Get out of here.
So we're on the same car with them. And, whatever, we talked to them a little bit, and we wound up pulling into Penn Station, and we're looking out the window, and there's thousands of people there. It was like a scene out of Hard Day's Night. And so we're right by the door, the front of the door, and the door opens up, and they're like sardines out there, and they look in and they said, "Oh, it's only Jay and the Americans." And they parted, and we walked through, and I took I wound up Church Avenue and Coney Island Avenue. At the time, I was married, and I took a cab back, and I wound up going into my apartment. I had a 2-room apartment, and I sat there, and I thought, what just happened? It was like, it was like all of a sudden, that was the moment where they changed the world, really. It was at that moment. Hair changed, fashions changed, everything. So about 6 or 8 months later, Murray the K is running a show at the Carnegie Hall in Manhattan. And he asked us to, be on the show with the Beatles. With the Rolling Stones. There was going to be 2 shows. And we go on at the front of the show. We got these alpaca sweaters and these Dickies, with turtlenecks. And
how old are you?
I saw the video.
Are you 25 yet?
Almost. I end up, doing these steps and whatever, doing Only in America, Come a Little Bit Closer, Caramia.
Can we hear one of those songs now, Ken? Caramia, which one we got?
Come a Little Bit Closer. That's one of my favorites. Any of
Let's
them.
do it.
But I think you got a tape on Caramia. Play a little bit of it, and I'll go back to the story.
Okay. We let him off the hook. Okay, let me do that. Sorry.
Darling,
we basically, I guess maybe the people that were watching the Rolling Stones thought that, it was, you know, we were from another place at that point, because even though it was great, it was a particular type of music. And the Stones, I remember we shared the dressing room with them. And I remember watching them, the Bill Wyman, the bass player, he was basically leaning up against the wall chewing gum. And I thought, what does that have to do? We were doing steps and everything, and these guys were just lounging around. And then Murray the K says, we had to do 2 shows. So he says to us, oh, by the way, you guys got to close the second show. So I said, we can't follow the Rolling Stones. He says, if you don't do it, he says, there's going to be a riot.
Oh,
so we acquiesced and said, okay, so they go on and the people are going crazy and the girls are leaping for the stage, leaping out of their chairs, going crazy. And then they finish their set and they're sneaking them out of the back. And Murray the Key says, right now from Brooklyn, New York, Jay and the Americans. And we come out and we're singing Only in America. And while we're singing the song, Dave, the audience is getting up and running out the back door. So what happened was
they knew
what was happening. So we basically finished the song and we had cleared Carnegie Hall out. The whole audience was gone. Got off the stage and I thought to myself, I better get a guitar. And that pretty much was the reason why I started to play the guitar.
Kenny, got a question. What do you want the world to know about doo-wop?
Well, doo-wop to me, first of all, I really never liked the term. And it was never called that, when I was a kid. And it never had a negative connotation. I think, the resistance that we had towards this film when we first started to try to get it into film festivals, it has a negative connotation. And, my whole thing with this film is that we're getting a chance to dispel that notion. The music that I heard as a kid was never called doo-wop. People wound up thinking as the years went by that doo-wop was something that was on happy days or that was, kind of corny. And it's far from that. It's the most incredible music because
poetry.
When it was
Talk about the conversation with Pitts in the car.
I could sort of add to that. I would like to ask him a question about that.
Sure.
What made you, well, I know I liked it too, very, very much, but what made you drawn to the 4 and 5 part harmony like I was, like the Playmates, the 4 Aces, the 4 Lads, the 4 Preps, and everything for us village elders, instead of going like with, the big wall of sound or something like that? What made you so attracted to the 4 and 5 part harmony like I was?
Well, it was, first of all, I think that the wall of sound wasn't until the middle 60s, when Phil Spector started to make those records with the Ronettes and the Righteous Brothers and Darlene Love and the Blossoms and the Crystals and stuff like that. The music that I'm really referring to was music from the early 1950s. It was like 54. There were groups like the Dominoes and the Clovers and Sonny Till and the Orioles.
Right.
And when in those days, coming out of the 40s into the early 50s, most of that music were older Black adults making music for a Black adult audience.
But not the 4 Lads and the 4 Aces and the 4 Preps.
No, but I never really cared so much for them. I liked them, but I wasn't really
They didn't inform you.
They weren't the ones who
They didn't
who
influence you.
they
No.
didn't really influence me. But what
Okay.
happened was,
Ken, when you and Pitt were
but
in
wait,
that car,
Dave,
I'm
one
sorry.
second. So basically, what happened was around that time, in an interview with some people that were in the know about the early days of rock and roll, like James Shepard and Eugene Pitt and Herb Cox and people like that from the Cleftones. They basically said that they, as 13 and 14-year-olds, wanted to write songs and also make a record. So they would listen to those stations. And those stations, when they had a hit, would sell, a huge hit would sell 40,000 records. But when these kids started to write songs like Why Do Fools Fall in Love and Maybe and Little Girl of Mine, two things happened. One was there was no such thing as a rock and roll musician. So they hired guys that played jazz in Birdland, guys who were born in 1890. And these guys were adults and they played on these records. And that's why when you hear the 55 records that are in Heart and Soul, A Love Story, those records, if those records were crap, there'd be no movie. But those records were infused by these adults, and these kids wrote songs that were hybrids of those songs. So they created a new music. There were no records that preceded Little, 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 yeah. There was no records like that. And they created this teenage sounds that were a hybrid of that. And those records were the records that all of a sudden sold 1 million copies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's created a revolution in the United States that to this day exists. And I'll explain that those records created a youth market. Who's buying these records? Teenage girls are buying these records. And so all of a sudden, the movie companies started to make movies for kids. The cosmetic companies started to make cosmetics for kids. The clothing companies started to make clothing for young kids. And to this day, that demographic is the demographic that all of these areas of commerce pander to. They are selling it to a youth market, and that exists to this day. But records like Why Do Fools Fall in Love and G by the Crows and Little Girl of Mine by the Cleftones and the Dubs and Arlene Smith, those are the records that are really responsible for starting that movement.
It's very interesting. So people started innovating with the sounds of these older gentlemen from the South. And I remember in a bio with Elvis that he, as a kid, he on a scratchy transistor radio, he heard the sounds, and that's how he got introduced to.
Exactly, because Elvis grew up in Tupelo, so the main big city where Sun Records was, which had Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley and Roy Orbison and Jerry Lee Lewis. He went to Beale Street in Memphis, and on Beale Street were people like, I don't know exactly, but that's where he heard, rhythm and blues, and that's where he heard those. He heard Big Mama Thornton singing, and that's where that music comes from. And Elvis was like one of the first white performers, but he was for real. It wasn't like he was faking it. I mean, that music was in his blood, and those records that he made for Sun Records were the beginning of a whole other movement of artists. I'm pretty much talking about the urban centers in the Northeast which produced this music that ultimately became known as doo-wop.
Very interesting. Now, I have a question about the movie. It was great. I was at the premiere in the Museum of City in New York. That was great. And Ditto mentioned that, unfortunately, after the storm, Hurricane Sandy, you found a box of recordings. Did I get that right? Did that have to
Well,
do?
yeah, I mean, I was playing with the Planetones on a like a Time Life, cruise. They would have these cruises, oldies cruises with Dion and Frankie Avalon, and those people were on the cruise, and we were on a cruise, and basically, I saw the weather change, and the house that I lived in for 40 years was washed out to sea. But when I went back to the house a few days afterwards, I found, a bunch of CDs that were on top. My kitchen was somewhat intact, and on top of it was a floor, and there were no walls and no sky, no ceiling, all just sky.
So the whole house was obliterated.
Obliterated. And I
Oh
went
my
up there
God.
with a ladder, and it was my office where I had a desk, and there were a bunch of CDs that I had in there, and DVDs and CDs, and inside of plastic bags, and they were pretty much preserved. And I was living in a FEMA hotel in Staten Island, and over the weeks and months of being there, I would look at what I had salvaged from the house, which wasn't much, but they were it was the spark of the idea to try to acquire all of the footage, that wound up being heart and soul a love story.
How long did it take you to do that film, Ken? How long?
Well, I would say at least 8, maybe 10 years, pretty much, because having the spark of an idea is one thing, but actually, taking the ball over the finish line and over the goal line is a life's journey.
Kenny, you opened you Black History Month at the Grammy Museum.
Yeah.
Heart and Soul was the opening movie.
Yeah.
Tell me how you see how that reached the Black community, because they were your soulmates, they were your comrades, they were your teammates throughout this entire enterprise.
Oh, yeah. If you go on heartandsoulthemovie.com, you'll see I was recently given an award at the Long Island Music Hall of Fame, a legacy award. A lot of people were beautiful, gracious enough to do a tribute to me. Chaz Palminteri and Cousin Brucey and Tony Orlando and Paul Schaefer. And I hope I'm leaving a few people out, but excuse me. And there was when we did the Grammy Museum for Black History Month, there was a guy that most of the doo-wop people don't know, but I got to know, a beautiful, beautiful man by the name of a group that he was in called Kid and Play. And he came up and he did a tribute to me, and he wrote a poem on the spot. And that we included that in when we did the Long Island Music Hall of Fame. And if you get a chance, it's so heartfelt and so genius and so right on the money of what he wrote that I will cherish it for my whole life. And so yeah, because
Ken, tell us about
everybody that night, and I would say it was mostly an African American audience, were coming over to me and hugging me and saying, "Thank you for doing this. Mm-hmm. This was so long overdue, and we're so thrilled that you honored our community."
Ken, when Pitch said to you in Heart and Soul, "We were singing love songs to the girls that we were going to marry as kids," that just broke me up. He's in that car scene.
Oh, he's such a brilliant songwriter, mm-hmm. and such a beautiful human being, and so talented that most people really don't have any idea how gifted and talented he is. And one
Who
of the
is this? Who
stories
we
he
talking
told me,
about?
Eugene Pitts.
Okay.
Pitt from the Jive Five, and one story, all the doo-wop aficionados will appreciate this. So he said to me, he says, my father was in the Golden Gate Quartet, which was a famous gospel quartet, and famous. And he says, but he taught us how to sing. So he tells me how he taught them. He said he put one guy on one end of the room, one guy on the other end of the room, and two guys on the side wall. So each guy had his own wall, and he put the lead singer in the middle. This way, when each guy sang his part, none of the other guys would lean on his note. So he got them to understand what it was to sing harmony. And he said, and we did it every day for 2 years before we did our audition at God, I forgot the name of the label, but at the record company. And the guy said, do you have any original songs? And he says, yeah, we got one that I don't really like that much because it's about me. I wrote it, and it's called My True Story.
Oh, yeah.
We sang the song for the producer there, and he says, that's a hit. That's a hit. and a couple of weeks later, we recorded it. And in 1960, it was a huge, top 5 record in the United States.
Ken, I'm going to ask you to take us to Saturday Night Live and that experience.
Well, what time we got?
I have at least one more question too.
Yeah, let's place another one of those.
Or another song and another song.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
which one would you like so you could take a break for a sec?
I liked Your Way.
All right, let's find it.
Beautiful.
Well, or The Way You Look Tonight at a Rehearsal.
All right, I got that.
That was great.
Okay, let's do that.
When I'm awfully low and the world is cold, I will feel the glow just thinking of you and the way you look tonight. Oh, you're lovely with your smile so warm and your cheeks so soft. There is nothing for me but to love you, just the way you look tonight. With each word, your tenderness grows, tearing my fears apart. And that laugh that wrinkles your nose touches my foolish heart. You're lovely. Never, never change. Keep that breathless just the way you look tonight.
Ken, your legacy. How do you see it?
Yeah.
Dave, I don't know.
I have a question, and I'm burning.
I don't know. You know why I don't know? Because, like, it just keeps going, and I feel so blessed, to have made this film and to get it out in the world now, when people can look at it much more objectively, because I think music in this country has gone about as far out and as far as it can go. And when you all of a sudden include this in the whole template of what music history is about, you can focus in on it in an intellectual way and say, oh my God, this stuff there's something so real about it. There's something so sensitive about it. There's
So
something
special
so
about it.
meaningful about it and special that hopefully it will clear up the disinformation that has been spread about this music all along.
So is that initiate? What are your thoughts about the current state of music?
I don't really pay that much attention to it. I don't really know.
So if there was a song you wanted to listen to today, what would it be?
Well, I don't know. I like Bruno Mars. I'm a big fan of Bruno Mars. I can listen to him because
Talented, very
he
talented.
really does understand where it all came from. He was actually in a doo-wop group that his father ran, I think when he was 4 years old in Hawaii. So he really does understand this. And I heard from somebody in doing a recent podcast, they said to me that Bruno Mars, he sings a song that's 70 years old in his show, which is Please Say You Want Me by the Schoolboys.
Yep.
Please say you want me to. And so, he sings it and they don't know that it's a 70-year-old song. They think it's his. And so it just goes to show you, if you present this to people and they don't have a stigma attached to it, they'll embrace it.
That's phenomenal. And Bruno Mars is very talented. He's excellent. I have a question. Can we go back to the Brill building for a second? You told me that there were some afternoons you had an office there for a while. Is that right?
Yeah, we had many years later, I think like around the 1968, 67, 68, we decided to open a production company there, kind of like Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller had. And we opened...
Who was we? Who'd you do it with?
With the J and the Americans.
Great.
It's called JATA, Jata, JATA. And we had a production company there, yes.
And you said that you used to schedule an afternoon and there'd be Carole King pitching songs or Neil Diamond. Tell us about one of those afternoons.
That basically was with Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. Once we started to have hits, then every couple of months, when it came time to record another set, another group of records, they would have all of the young songwriters, who were writing in those days, like Neil Sedaka and Neil Diamond and Carole King and Burt Bacharach and Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich and all of that level of songwriters would come in, and we would be sitting around casually, and they would
And
play.
you're how old? You're like a little pisher, right?
No. By now, we had been to France. We were, we had been, in the business now for many years. It was 1966 by then. So we had been doing this for 5 years, And so, we had some sort of educated guesses of what, we should record. And we recorded some of Burt Bacharach's early stuff, and we actually recorded the first hit that Neil Diamond ever had, which was called Sunday and Me.
That's amazing. My dad had a record store in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn for 27 years. And Neil Diamond's father had a store right around the corner from my dad's store, across from Mrs. Stahl's, Knishes. And Neil Diamond's father used to come in every week to see the Billboard charts. And I was 10, 11 years old working there. And, those days we had a Victrola, and my uncle used to cut out the Billboard charts, paste them out every week, put it under the glass, and then people would come and let me hear this one, and we would take requests. And then after a couple of years, I think it was Solitary Man, my brother was working that day, that his father came in, and they were like Mazel Tovs. And
By the way, Stevie, were you there when Kenny was doing that singing in Brighton Beach?
No, but I wish I was. It sounds like it was right down the street from where I grew up, and my dad's store was across from Stahl's. Now, what was your favorite? Let's get down to important stuff. What was your favorite knish at Mrs. Stahl's knish?
I was always a traditional guy. I always liked the spinach knish. I liked the potato knish, and I liked the God, I forget.
They had an onion one.
Yeah, something like that.
It was an onion. They called it the onion pretzel. It was like the inside of a bialy.
Yep. Yeah.
But the whole thing, and I used to joke around because I loved it, because you got to taste it twice, because you were burping for the next 2-3 weeks.
I would die if I ate it now.
But the key was, and here's another key question: they also served lime rickeys and egg creams. Mm-hmm. So which did you prefer? I guess egg creams are the classic.
Well, both, depending on the day or the mood, but both, I love both.
And on a serious note, tell me about what it felt like to be working with Ladd and your niece.
Oh, well, in the last incarnation of the Planetones, which was, less than a year ago, maybe 8 months ago, we played at a private party in Palm Beach. And before that, we played at a couple of the theater at Del Rey, and we played at the Mohegan Sun. And so my son has been singing with me for at least maybe 5 years, and he, we sort of, got him on the same page as us, because you almost had to grow up with this to understand the idiom and the feel. It has a certain feel. You could teach the people the notes, but if they don't have the feel for it, they're not going to get it. But he wound up, owning the feel. And then I would do a bunch of duets with him, and it was thrilling, to share that aspect of myself with my son. And then my niece surprised me one night, and she also could sing. And she told me, she's 30, and she told me that when she was a kid, the only music that she would listen to was my music, was the Planetones. And she basically she could imitate, my feel. So then I said to her, well, we got a few shows, and I want you to come and sing with us. And it was just, I was so blessed to be able to share that with her, to share that experience with her, and to also, have my son Ladd there and experience it, and have the three of us experience it together. And hopefully, as time goes by, we'll get a chance to do that again at some point.
Ken, there was a moment I was with you when you came off stage and you said, Dave, did you hear that? My God, did you hear that? And I'm saying to myself, Ken's 80-something years old, and he's still saying, did you hear how wonderful that sound was? Did you live for that sound, Ken?
Oh, yeah. There was Dave, you and I have shared so many, beautiful memories together. We went out to California together to the Grammy Museum. We were blessed to play at the Lake City, Iowa,
Iowa, yeah.
at the Buddy Holly
Yeah.
dance every year, and in remembrance of the flight that he took in Lake City, Iowa, probably in 1958, and every year since that tragedy, they have an event there, and thousands of people show up to this day from all over the world. They were from Germany, and they were from Japan, and they were from Spain, and they were from England, and of course all through the United States. And Kenny Vance and the Planetones was not a household name, and I would be there. Sometimes we'd be selling the CDs, and there'd be a big line around. And I would say to people, "How do you know us?" And they say, "We know you from YouTube."
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So that was it. That spread it.
They knew us from YouTube.
Your references to YouTube every day. Dave, check this on YouTube.
But guys, listen, this was great, but we have to do it again sometime. I'm starting to get a little
Gotcha. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken.
Tired, but it was beautiful. Steve, good luck with the show. I hope that it becomes a big success. Dave, God bless you. You're my man.
Love you, Vance. Love you, Vance.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Dave will open the show.
Later, guys. Good night, everybody.
Should we play one of the other videos to play it out?
Go ahead, yeah.
You have any requests?
Play Love Me.
Okay, I'm going to cue that up.
Play them all, Steve, and this way you can integrate them into your show.
And Neil Burson says hello, Ken.
Okay, baby.
Okay.
Take care.
Roll it. Stevie, roll it.
Yep.
Will remember you never will forget the one that you love yet now that she's gone. She's gone. You love her. I know. With a broken heart, you'll go your way, and she'll go her way.
So Kenny, thanks so much for showing up. And my name, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Steve Stein, and I'm the host of the Brooklyn Stories podcast. And we're doing this podcast. And Kenny, thank you, and Ditto, thank you so much for graciously supporting, because I wrote a screenplay and a novel, and now we're trying to make a streaming series about my dad's record store and the summer of '69 in Brighton Beach. And so that's why we're doing this. But even more important, that's why we're doing this with Kenny. We're so honored to have you. All right, Kenny, thanks everyone for showing up, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
You got it. My pleasure. Thank you for showing up, guys.
That was
Big is in. A big is in.
Big is in. Absolutely.
You know, in those days, the way groups started, none of us really knew any music. So if you were lucky enough to have 3 guys hit 3 different notes, the next day we bought suits and took pictures.
And here it is, Alan Freed's Rock and Roll Party.
I remember hearing Alan Freed on the radio. He was having a rock and roll show. No one knew what that was. I took the subway to the Brooklyn Paramount. It was the most unbelievable thing I'd ever seen in my life. Everybody could sing their ass off.
When you heard all of those harmonies interchanging, it was beautiful.
I had never seen choreography like that in my life.
I love to look out in the audience. You could feel it, people enjoying themselves.
The major record companies all of a sudden had to take notice and say, what are these guys doing?
Once the note comes down and you can feel the vibration of the harmony, there's nothing like it.
My father trained us to sing gospel. When we got out in the street, that's when we sang doo-wop.
Baby, baby, how I want you.
George Goldner, he was a cat who made records, signed groups, owned the record company.
How would you like to look at a gold record with your name on it and not get paid for it?
When it's sold, someone says, well, how much did you make? And we go, well, we didn't really make anything.
They stopped promoting us. I still get a little, when I talk about it.
Next thing I know, it ain't what it was. So now I hit the bottom. Wham!
It's rock and roll.
It is now.
And when that light comes on, like you hear that music, that's it. No matter how bad you feel, it's showtime.
You guys have been together since you're teenagers.
Right.
And to still be together and to have made it through, it's a miracle. We've carried these songs with us through the years. They live inside of us.
I just enjoyed it so much that I did it for 42 years.
This is where it all started. It's the music of the unsung heroes of rock and roll.